Have you ever gone into Mother's Day hoping maybe this year will be different? And instead, it ends up feeling heavy, disappointing, or even painful? Maybe your child refuses to participate. Maybe there's no card, no thank you, no moment where you feel seen. Maybe there's a meltdown, canceled plans, where you're just trying to hold it together while everyone else seems to be celebrating. And then on top of that, there's this pressure to feel grateful, to see the good, to shift your perspective, to appreciate it all. But what if you can't? What if instead of gratitude, what you're actually feeling is grief or loneliness or the painful gap between what you hoped for and what you're living? What if nothing is wrong with you and you don't actually have to feel grateful right now? In this episode, I'm going to walk you through what's really happening underneath that pressure and show you a different way to move through this day. One where you can feel more seen, more validated, and less alone without forcing yourself to feel something you don't. So let's begin. For years, I hated Mother's Day because of everything the day came to represent. Okay? The expectation of celebrations that were never met because it was too much for my son, the grief of feeling like I would never be acknowledged by others or by my own child in the way that I really longed for. The reality of not even being able to take a break on this one day, okay? And the pressure to feel grateful for it all. And then the guilt for not being able to show up, okay, for my own mother and celebrate her, and the guilt for feeling this way about Mother's Day, right? So Mother's Day wasn't just a day, it became something loaded. Okay, so there were many years when my son could handle family gatherings. Okay, those were the good old days. I would host, I would have the grandmothers over, make the food, order the cake, still doing everything. But my son would enjoy it. We would all enjoy it. And back then, he was going to school. So I would get a handmade card or a piece of art that, they would make all the kids make at school. And there were small, simple moments where I could feel appreciation, where I could feel connection. Okay, but then when things shifted, okay, my son became more extroverted in his PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance. And then OCD started to emerge and the rages just started to intensify. And he stopped going to school. Then all of those moments slowly disappeared. Okay, the celebrations fell away. And Mother's Day, it became something else entirely. It became a quiet reminder of the kind of Mother's Day that I might never have again. Okay, the kind where your child runs up to you with a card, the kind where you feel seen, appreciated, and reflected back to, the kind where something inside of you can finally relax and say, I'm happy to be a mother. Okay, so over time, it became just another hard day on the calendar. A day where my son's needs still came first, a day where I still had to keep going without pause, without relief, okay? A day where somehow I was still expected to feel grateful and appreciative for being a mother. And even as I say this, okay, I know that for some of you, this is going to feel uncomfortable for you to hear, okay? Because it was uncomfortable for me to even know that I had these thoughts, right? Like so many of us feel this way. How can a mother not feel grateful for being a mom? After all, there are like many women out there who desperately want to be mothers and cannot conceive, right? So I thought those same thoughts. And because of that, I felt awful for the grief, awful for feeling alone, awful for not being able to access gratitude in the way that I thought I should. There was so much pressure, not just from the outside, but from within myself too. Okay, but I also know this. Some of you will feel relief hearing this because you felt it too. Okay, you've just never said it out loud, right? It's like blasphemy and in motherhood to say these things, but it's important to name them. Okay, what I've come to understand, both through my own experience and through the work that I do, is that what doesn't get named doesn't go away. It doesn't just disappear. Okay, it stays in the body. It builds in the nervous system, and it keeps us stuck in cycles of shame and pressure and internal conflict. Okay, it keeps the nervous system stuck. But when something gets acknowledged honestly without trying to fix it right away, it creates the space, okay? Space for choice, space to find ways to support yourself, and space for things to move forward and shift, right? Your nervous system becomes more unstuck. Okay, so I want to take a moment to really validate this experience because so many of us bypass it. Okay, that's the life we're living. We shouldn't be thinking this way. We shouldn't be feeling this way, and we bypass it. But the reality of parenting a high needs child, where so much of your energy, your attention, your resources go into your child or your children, okay? That's the reality, right? That we're all living. And then there's this one day called Mother's Day, or it could be a special, like a birthday, or it could be Father's Day, right? Where society tells you that you should be appreciated, you should be celebrated and cared for, right? Okay, that's the messaging we all get. That's like the little like gleam of hope and wishful, thinking we all have inside, the yearning, the longing for. And then instead what happens? It becomes a day that highlights everything that you don't have, right? That's where your brain goes. It looks at everything that you don't have, right? A day that carries the weight of your daily reality plus the grief of comparison. Okay, so this is why Mother's Day is loaded, right? Because we're watching other mothers, and other families who have it easier. We're watching those mothers receive what your system deeply longs for, right? To feel special, to feel valued, to feel like a good enough mother. And inside, it can feel like you are holding all of that alone. Okay, so for years, I thought about Mother's Day. Okay, I wanted to get to a place where I could feel genuine gratitude for the journey, for what I was learning, for how I was growing, for the ways that my child was shaping me into the person I wanted to become. And I do believe that that is possible for you, okay? Because it was for me eventually. But there were so many Mother's Days that it didn't feel real, okay? Where it felt like I was faking it, like I was gaslighting myself, I was overriding the grief, criticizing myself for not being able to feel differently. And underneath all of that was something deeper, okay? A longing. I wanted my son to show me through his connection, through his growth, right? Through his doing well in life, that I was doing it right, that he loved me, that he appreciated me, that all of this effort meant something and was making a positive impact on his life. But I didn't receive that in the way that I needed for years, right? Okay, so this is where something began to shift for me. Okay, there's a shift that really changed everything. I realized that if I wanted to eventually feel gratitude, right? Like not forced, not performative, but something that felt true in my body, okay, I couldn't bypass where I actually was. I had to start with allowing my experience, okay, with validating what was real, because that is what actually gets us unstuck, okay? Meeting yourself where you are first, okay? This is what actually allows movement to happen, right? Validate yourself where you are right now, okay? And then over time, that is what creates the conditions for something deeper to emerge, right? More meaning, more growth, even gratitude that eventually comes from the heart, okay? And not from the head or from pressure. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be talking about today, right? Really about how to meet yourself where you are and how to support yourself through this first. Okay, so this is not just my story, right? It's not just my story. If you're here, it's not just my story. This is something I now see in so many mothers. I also see it in fathers too, okay? Mother's Day or even your birthday is supposed to be a day where you feel celebrated, seen, and appreciated, especially by your child. But when you're parenting a PDA, autistic, or high needs child, that appreciation often doesn't come, at least not in the ways that you've been taught to expect it. Okay, often there are no handmade cards, right? No, I love you, mom. No, sometimes no hug, all right? Sometimes active rejection, sometimes a meltdown and canceled plans because the day itself feels like too much for them. And underneath all of that is a grief that most people don't talk about. Does my child even know how much I love them? Does any of this matter? Will they ever appreciate what I'm doing? Am I a good enough mother if my child has all these challenges? If this is what Mother's Day feels like for you, you are not alone and you are not a bad mom. Okay. So let's just take a moment to talk about the grief, okay? Because the grief is a hard one and everybody tends to bypass grief, right? Because it's kind of like feels like taboo that you're feeling grief over your child. Okay, so let's just name the reality of how much grief that this parenting experience can bring, especially on these special days. Okay, it's really important to name this, okay, not bypass it. We crave this validation from others, the outside world, and from our child or our children, but we don't often get it. Okay, and that can feel like a loss. So it's important to name that and important to feel that loss, right? To help it process. Like we want our children to know how much we love them and how much we do for them and how hard we're trying. Okay, we're moving heaven and earth to help them, right? Even deeper than that, we want to feel that our love is actually landing, okay? That it's being felt by them, that it matters, that it's being received in some way. Often we don't get that feedback, okay? And this can feel like a huge loss in our system, which is totally natural because we're designed, okay, to want that kind of feedback from our child. We're designed to want that because that feedback, it nourishes us, right? And it stimulates all those feel-good chemicals like the love chemical of oxytocin that nourishes us to keep us going and keep us doing all the hard things for them. Okay, but in real life, like many of our kids are so chronically stressed that they can't even think to make a card or say thank you or even say I love you. Real life is just a lot of meltdowns. Okay, they're maybe pushing you away or seeming completely indifferent to everything you do. That happens a lot, right? And on a day that is supposed to be about appreciation, you can end up feeling more rejected than celebrated. Okay, when that happens, there are questions that naturally begin to surface. Okay, questions that can feel incredibly painful to even admit to yourself. And those are, does my child even know I love them? Does any of this matter? Am I pouring into someone who will never appreciate it? Okay, and maybe the hardest one of all, what if they never show me that they feel loved? Okay, of course this hurts because this isn't just about appreciation. Okay, it's about connection. It's about being seen. It's about wanting some reflection, some sign that what you are giving is being received. That is not selfish, okay? That is human. And what makes this even more painful is that you're not just grieving what is happening today, you're grieving the version of motherhood that you imagined. Okay, the ease, the mutual connection, the natural back and forth. Okay, the feedback loop where your child reflects your love back to you in a way that your system can recognize and settle into. Okay, when that isn't there, or isn't there consistently, it creates a kind of grief that is rarely named. Okay, but it is real. Grief is real and it deserves to be felt and not bypassed. So feeling and processing grief can be immensely helpful to getting the nervous system unstuck and moving towards greater regulation. Okay, grief is something that can really keep the nervous system stuck. For a long time, I did what I call weekly grief dumps. Okay, I call them grief dumps. And I would recognize the loss, I would feel the grief that I was experiencing and allow it to process. And this helped me immensely to be able to stay present and more regulated for my son over time and to keep going. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the pressure to be grateful. Okay. And why it doesn't work. Okay. Because this is another thing we need to let go of as well, so that we're not putting so much pressure on our system. The other thing that happens on Mother's Day or special days is we often feel like we should feel grateful. So everywhere you look, right, Mother's Day is loaded with messages of gratitude and pride in the kids doing something for their mother, right? And Mother's Day becomes this one day where you're supposed to feel it more than ever, to see the gift, to see the growth, to shift your perspective, to be thankful for it all. And sometimes, yes, you can. There are moments where you could feel that you genuinely feel appreciation for your child, for what you're learning, for how this journey is shaping you. But when you're in survival mode, chronic stress, okay, and when your child just melted down and plans got canceled, and when you're sitting alone, overwhelmed, maybe even hiding in the bathroom trying to hold it together, gratitude doesn't feel grounding, okay? It feels like pressure. Because real gratitude cannot be forced. Okay? When you try to force it, especially when your system is overwhelmed, it doesn't land as something supportive. It often lands as something else entirely. Okay? It becomes another layer. Okay? Now you're not only struggling for what's happening, you're also judging yourself for struggling. Right? So you start to think, I should be grateful. Other moms can feel this. Why can't I? What's wrong with me that I can't shift my perspective right now? And then without realizing it, the focus moves away from the reality of what you're carrying and onto what you think that you should be feeling instead. Okay, so this is where gratitude, forcing yourself to feel it, can feel like gaslighting. Okay, not because gratitude itself is wrong. Obviously, it's not. There's like so much research, like hundreds of research studies that talk about how gratitude is so helpful for anyone, right? For mental health. Okay, we all want to get there. Okay, so gratitude is not wrong, right? But because it's being asked of you, or you're asking it of yourself at a time when your system doesn't have capacity to access it. Okay, so instead of supporting you, it disconnects you even further from what is actually true in the present moment of what your truth, what you're feeling in the present moment. Okay, and this is where I want to offer you something different. Okay, you don't have to feel grateful right now. So permission right here. I feel like so many clients come to me and they just want to hear some permission. Okay, so give yourself permission. You don't have to feel grateful right now. You don't have to find the silver lining right now. You don't have to turn this moment into something meaningful right now. You don't have to prove that you're growing through this right now. Okay, you can just be in the hard. Okay, you can just feel what you feel. Okay, allow yourself, give yourself that gift, feel what you feel without needing to change it or fix it or reframe it. Okay, and that is more than enough. You are more than enough for feeling this way. Okay, because being able to be in the hard first, right? Really being able to be in it and be with it, being with whatever state your nervous system is in, is actually the first step in becoming a more regulated human who can eventually feel more gratitude down the road. Okay, so this is where you need to start. Okay, don't force yourself. Permission. You don't have to feel gratitude. Don't force yourself right now. Meet yourself where you are. Okay, it's okay. Okay, so here I'm going to give you some options now next, okay, of what you can focus on instead of gratitude. Okay, so if gratitude doesn't feel accessible right now, and you're feeling bad because you don't feel it, right? I want to offer you some other places that you can land. Okay, not as a way to bypass what you're feeling, okay, because we're going to get into not, this is the way to not bypass, right? But as a way to meet yourself, okay? Meet yourself in a way that feels more honest, more grounded, more supportive to your nervous system, because that's how you start climbing out of this state, right? Like when you can't feel gratitude and you're feeling more grief or hopelessness, you're in what's called the dorsal vagal shutdown state, and your story will follow your state. When you can meet yourself where you are and bring kind, loving support to yourself, okay, you can help yourself, called what's climbing up the polyvagal ladder, back up into like more present, calm, relaxed, alert, alive state, okay? When you're in survival mode, right, when you're overwhelmed, grieving, or feeling unseen, gratitude can feel too far away. So it's too much of a stretch. And that's why it's not realistic to go there right now. So instead of trying to leap to something that doesn't feel real, you can begin somewhere closer to the truth of your experience. Okay. So I'm gonna walk you through a few different ways that you can meet yourself where you are. So, and what you can use instead of gratitude. Okay. So number one is acknowledgement. Okay. You don't have to feel grateful. You can just acknowledge what is, right? So you might say to yourself, this is hard. And this is acknowledgement of where you are, but also acknowledgement of yourself. Okay. In positive ways. So you might say to yourself, this is hard. Okay. I showed up today. Right? So you're acknowledging yourself. I showed up today. I kept going even when I didn't want to. Okay. And then, or I'm doing something most people will never understand. Okay. Acknowledgement is powerful because it is more neutral. It doesn't ask you to reframe the experience. It doesn't ask you to find the good in it. It doesn't ask you to override what you're feeling. It simply asks you to see what is true. And sometimes just naming the truth without trying to fix it, change it, or make it more acceptable is one of the most regulating things that you can do. Because in that moment, you are no longer abandoning yourself or resisting what you feel. Okay, you're saying, okay, this is what I'm carrying, and I'm willing to see it. Okay, acknowledge yourself. Okay, number two, self-appreciation instead of gratitude for your child or for this journey. Okay, self-appreciation. So instead of trying to feel grateful for what this experience is teaching you, you can gently shift the focus back to yourself. And this is not in a self-centered way, right? This is in a self-honoring way. So you might say, I appreciate myself for how I'm showing up. Okay, even if you don't feel like it, right? You can name this even more specifically. I appreciate that I didn't give up today. I appreciate that I'm learning how to support my nervous system. I appreciate that I kept trying even when nothing worked. Okay, I appreciate that I repaired after I snapped. Okay, I appreciate that I'm here doing this even on the days that I don't want to be. Okay, what this does is that it shifts your focus away from trying to find gratitude for the struggle and instead towards recognizing who you are within the struggle. Okay, this is the shift, right? Recognizing who you are within the struggle, right? Your effort, your persistence, your willingness to keep showing up. Okay, and that matters. Okay, even if no one else sees it, acknowledge yourself and appreciate yourself, number two. And then number three is just presence instead of gratitude, right? Instead of putting the pressure on yourself to feel gratitude, maybe it's just, okay, I'll come back to the present moment, feel more presence, right? Sometimes you don't need to feel better, although coming back to the present moment does generally help you feel a little better. Right? Coming back to where you are in the now, in the present moment, okay? And instead of focusing on the need to feel grateful, okay? You just need to be here and present because being in your body in the present is actually a safety cue and can bring you back to your more grounded and centered place. Okay, so the way that you can do this is you might notice one thing in the room that feels neutral or safe, right? So you look around the room, you can name 5 to 10 things or let your eyes land on one thing and just take that in. That helps you come back to the present a little bit more. Or feel your feet on the ground, right? Push your feet into the floor, Feel the sensations and the temperature at your feet, and the texture in your feet, feel your feet, right? That can help you feel more present. Or take one breath or a few breaths where you take a longer exhale than the inhale, and you just focus on the breathing, right? That can help you become more present. Or you just let yourself be exactly as you are. Whatever is here, you just notice it, what's here, okay? And let go of trying to change it. Just allow it to be here. And you could even say to yourself, put a hand on your heart and say to yourself, this too belongs. Okay. And presence doesn't ask you to perform. Okay. It doesn't ask you to become a different version of yourself. It simply invites you to stay with yourself in the moment. And for a nervous system that is used to pushing through, fixing, or escaping, this can be a profound shift, okay? Because instead of leaving yourself in the hard moment, you stay. And this is deeply repairing for the nervous system, okay? So presence helps you stay with yourself. Okay, number 4 is meaning instead of gratitude. Now, I'm going to invite meaning in. This might feel pressure for some of you, but for some of you, meaning might be an easier thing to grasp onto than gratitude. Okay, so that's why I put this one in. Okay, so instead of saying, I'm grateful for this pain because it's teaching me, right? Because I do teach that a lot. In a lot of my podcasts, you probably heard me say that. I'm grateful for this pain because it's teaching me in some way, right? So you look at the growth and the gain. But sometimes when you're in this state, it can feel like spiritual bypassing, right? Like you're trying really hard because you're not ready for it right now in this state. So you might say with a very curious what if in front of it, what if this pain has meaning? So you're just like opening up to inviting in meaning, right? What if I am growing through this? What if I am breaking cycles? What if I am becoming more of who I truly am? And you might reflect on, okay, I'm learning how to support my nervous system, and that will stay with me for life, right? So even though it's hard right now, I'm learning how to support my nervous system, and that will stay with me for life. I'm breaking patterns of control and shame and suppression, right? I'm raising a child who gets to be fully themselves, and that matters. This is hard, and it has purpose. Okay, so meaning allows two things to be true at the same time. That this is painful, yes. So you're not like bypassing that. You're meeting that where it is. And this is meaningful. Okay, so two truths, right? It doesn't force you to feel good about the struggle. It simply allows you to see that what you are doing and who you are becoming has depth and purpose and even some gain instead of it feeling like all loss. Okay. So if you're not ready for meaning yet in this way, especially today, right now, as you've come to this podcast, let it go. That's okay. Okay. Let that be there. But I invite that in because meaning can be sometimes easier than gratitude. Okay. And then number 5 is compassion instead of gratitude. Okay. So if gratitude feels out of reach, compassion is a really great place to begin. Okay. So you're not fixing, you're not reframing, you're not improving, you're just meeting yourself with kindness. Okay. So you might say, of course I feel this way. Of course this is hard. I'm doing the best that I can. I deserve kindness, especially from myself. Okay, so compassion doesn't require anything from you. It doesn't ask you to change your emotions, right? It simply asks you to be with yourself differently, with kindness. Okay, and for many parents, that shift from self-judgment to self-compassion is where healing begins, or where healing really moves into a deeper level, because self-compassion is highly regulating the system. Okay, and then number 6 is just about letting it be hard. Okay, so I add this in. I've talked about this already through some of the other, before this in this podcast. but I just wanted to name it explicitly on its own here. Letting it be hard without needing to fix it or find the lesson. For some of you, this is just what you'll need today, okay? And this is also can be an ongoing practice in your life. Okay, sometimes the most honest and supportive thing you can say is, this is hard, right? I don't have to make it mean something right now. I don't have to find the gift in this moment. You can just let it be hard, okay, without rushing to change it, without turning it into growth, without trying to make it more acceptable, because not every moment needs to become something else. Okay, so some moments just need to be felt. And when you allow that, you remove the pressure to perform healing. That in itself creates a lot of space inside. Okay. And actually, it does end up feeling healing, just to be in the hard, because so many of us fight it, resist it, right? Shame ourselves for it. And it's okay to just be in the hard. Okay. Okay. So let's get into a shift, right? The shift, because I always do this in every podcast, right? The shift I'm inviting you into, right? How to validate yourself when your child can't, right? Because Mother's Day, whew, we're not getting the validation that a lot of us want, right? Okay, so the deeper shift here is to begin moving away from needing your child or others to show appreciation in order to feel like a good mom or parent. And even in this day and age with social media, moving away from needing to post something like happy about Mother's Day, right? In order to feel like a good enough parent, right? Okay. I also want to name this clearly, okay? Your longing is not wrong, right? The longing, the yearning for wanting to be validated, it's not wrong. It doesn't mean you shouldn't want appreciation. It doesn't mean it wouldn't feel good to be seen and get that reciprocal feedback from your child who you pour your heart and soul and all your energy into daily. Okay, of course it would. That kind of feedback is so nourishing for a nervous system that works so hard to co-regulate and help your child all the time. The reality is that your child may not be able to show appreciation in the ways that you've been taught to expect. Okay, at least not consistently and not in those specific forms. Okay, and that doesn't mean your love isn't landing. It doesn't mean your presence doesn't matter. It means that you may need to learn how to see it differently. Okay, so let's talk about, there's two main practices, and then a third one that I want to talk about here in terms of validating yourself, learning to validate yourself, because this could be a real game changer for many people's nervous systems. So practice one is widening your lens to see the glimmer moments. Okay, and I talk about this a lot, of seeing glimmer moments, but this is really pertaining to yourself, right? And seeing the glimmer moments of what's happening, right? Learning to notice the quiet, invisible moments called glimmers where your child does take in your love, even if it doesn't look like a card or a hug or a Hallmark experience, right? And let that experience nourish you and validate your worth as a parent. Okay, this is helping your brain to orient to a glimmer as a fundamental practice that I teach all of my clients and students in the Regulation Rebuild course that I have for nervous system regulation, right? Because in chronic stress, it's so easy for your brain to get stuck in negativity bias. Okay, so and then you can't see the signs around you. So noticing, getting your brain to purposely notice glimmers, okay, which are tiny moments of goodness, can help immensely to bring the brain out of negativity bias and begin noticing very small things that signal safety and goodness, okay? And noticing the good builds a brain that can also see safety and goodness instead of just challenge and danger. And that is a more flexible nervous system. That's what we want, a flexible nervous system who can notice the good, okay, and the challenge, right? Not just the challenge and the danger, but also the good. We don't want to lose that. So a glimmer moment might be noticing the littlest of ways that your child shows you that you are affecting them in positive ways. Okay, so this is like a really, really using a fine eye to notice these moments, right? So it might be a moment of calm after you you stayed regulated. Okay, like little moments like that, like, ah, here's a moment of calm. I stayed regulated and now my child is more calm. Or your child leaning into you, right? Or maybe even having a small smile, right? Or your child just softening a bit, okay? Or your child choosing to be near you, even if they don't say why, okay? Or watching them access a skill that they couldn't access before, or a moment of joy or laughter or ease, like even if it's brief, okay? Feeling safe enough, your child feeling safe enough to unmask around you, okay? That might be a hard one for some, but that could actually be a glimmer because you know that your nervous system is helping them to express what's they're truly feeling and what's truly going on in their system in the moment they feel safe enough to do that. Okay, even though that can be hard on you. Okay, and then noticing the gradual or subtle shifts in their regulation over time, over the long haul, right? So these moments, they're easy to miss when you're stuck in chronic stress because they don't look like the version of appreciation that we've been conditioned to expect. Okay, but they are real signs, signs that your child is taking in your presence, signs that your nervous system is impacting theirs, signs that your love is landing, okay, just not in loud or obvious ways that you may think, right? But the foundational support that we are giving our children now, it often doesn't show bigger results until many years later. And if we don't notice the smallest bits of goodness, then our nervous systems will get stuck feeling like nothing works and you're failing. And that's simply not the truth, right? So help your brain notice the truth, all the little ways in which you are affecting them, and then validate yourself for it. Okay. And that's practice number 2, the deeper validation. Okay. You can validate yourself. You can say to yourself, or the part of you that does so much for your child, what you've been waiting for your child or your spouse or the grandparents to say to you, right? We're always like waiting for others to say things to us. You can say to yourself. So you can say to this part of you, I see how hard you're working. Okay. I see how much love you always give. I see everything you do and it matters. Okay. And when you do this, when you stop abandoning yourself while waiting for external validation, then something shifts. Okay. You stop needing your child or your spouse or others to show appreciation for you to feel like a good enough mom or parent. And you start to trust that your love is enough, even when the feedback doesn't come. Okay? And you give yourself the gift of being seen by you. Okay. And that is deeply nourishing. Okay. Let that be enough. Let that be enough. Okay. Okay. And now practice 3. If you've arrived here today and you're feeling activated, shut down, grief, or overwhelm on Mother's Day, here's a 60-second tool to help your nervous system settle. Okay. It's a quick nervous system reset if Mother's Day is feeling hard for you. So I'm going to invite you now to just find your feet. Okay. Notice your feet. Okay. Maybe press them into the ground a little bit. Feel the support underneath you. Okay. Notice the sensations and temperature in your feet. Was it soft? Is it mushy? Is it hard, cold, warm, tingly? Just feel your feet for a moment. If it helps to close your eyes, you can do that. And every time I do that and I feel the ground more, I breathe a sigh of relief. Okay. It's like helping your nervous system to shift and settle because the brain neurocept safety when you can feel your feet grounded or if you can feel your sit bones grounded. You now place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, right? Touch is another nervous system tool that can help us feel safer. And I invite you to take in 3 slow breaths. Okay, feeling your hands rise and fall, and I invite you to do a longer exhale. Go ahead and take in 3 breaths, slow breaths through your nose into the belly for a count of 4, and then count of 6 out the nose. Feel your hand on your chest and your belly supporting you, and take 2 more breaths. And then as you're holding your hand on your heart and on your belly, say to yourself, safe right now. This is hard, and I'm here with myself. And you can change those words to reflect words that work better for you. Just notice how that lands. Safe right now. This is hard, and I'm here with myself. And if it brings up emotions, let it bring up emotions. You tolerate being with the emotions just for a little bit, okay? And if the emotions feel too much, it's okay. You can orient to something, do some orienting, which is moving your head and neck slowly around the room and just orienting to something that feels either neutral or comforting or you appreciate, maybe a plant, maybe looking out the window, maybe looking at a photo, not triggering. Let your eyes rest there for a few breaths and just take it in. See how that lands in your system. So using this tool can help you come back to the present moment and release some stress and meet yourself where you are. Okay. So today is really about letting yourself be enough as you are. Okay. When you begin to shift out of waiting for appreciation and into seeing and validating yourself, something starts to change. Okay. Not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly and in ways that begin to matter. You stop feeling like a failure when your child can't show gratitude. You stop measuring your worth as a mother or parent by whether or not the day goes right. Okay? You begin to notice the quieter, more subtle ways that your child is taking in your love. Okay, ways that may not look like appreciation, but are still real. Okay? And maybe, most importantly, you begin to give yourself the compassion and acknowledgement that you've been waiting for from others. And you start to feel less alone, not because everything around you has changed, but because you are no longer leaving yourself in it, right? No longer abandoning yourself. You are with yourself. And that changes something deep inside, because the deeper truth is you don't need your child or anyone else to show appreciation or acknowledge you to be a good enough mom or parent. You don't need to feel grateful for the struggle right now in order to honor yourself and your strength. Okay, you just need to see yourself and allow yourself to be just as you are, right? To recognize what you are carrying, to acknowledge how much you are giving, to be with yourself exactly as you are. That is enough. So if today feels heavy, if it doesn't look like what you hoped for, if you feel unseen, unappreciated, or alone, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not failing, okay? And you are parenting in a way that most people will never fully understand. And that kind of love, the kind that keeps showing up, even when it isn't reflected back, still matters, okay? It counts, even here, even if all you do today is stay with yourself. If you breathe, if you allow what is, if you meet yourself with even a small amount of compassion, that is enough. So happy Mother's Day to you, my friend. Thank you for being with me on this journey. If this spoke to you, if this helped you in any way, please comment, please share with other parents that this could help too.